But it's now time to talk about what is going to be happening this upcoming weekend in Italy. So, Brandon, who is your podium pusher prediction for the Italian Grand Prix?
I'm going with Nico Hulkenberg. Nico drove a pretty good race out in Zandvoort, just missed out on points in P11. Going into the summer break, he was driving really, really well. A couple of points finishes. Continues to put the Haas where it shouldn't be. I expect Nico to have a good weekend. He did really well in Spa. And like we talked about in our last episode, there are some similarities between Spa and Monza with the high-speed track and the long straights. So maybe Nico will do well. I'm predicting him to do well. I think he could finish in the points.
I've gone with Lando Norris as my podium pusher of the weekend. I was a little conservative backing Lando Norris going into the summer break. He had a rough patch of form, maybe hadn't been getting the maximum out of that McLaren, but he definitely got the maximum out of that car in Zandvoort. He appears to be an extremely focused driver after this break. He appears to have a lot of momentum on his side coming out of the summer break in this race at Zandvoort. So I expect him to have another great weekend here in Monza. Who is your backmarker prediction for this weekend?
I've gone with Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki, I don't really know where he was last weekend. Didn't really seem like he was in Zandvoort. But that's okay. Yeah, Yuki just didn't have a great drive coming out of the summer break, and Daniel has performed well in Monza at the past, so I'm kind of expecting Daniel to have a good weekend and Yuki to have a bad weekend. So we'll see what happens, but this is kind of purely a vibe prediction here, but I'm going with Yuki Tsunoda to have a poor weekend.
I have gone for Franco Colapinto as my backmarker of the weekend, and I mean this in no poor, ill way at all. I just feel terrible for the guy that he has to make his debut at Monza in a Williams, because last time we saw a driver make their debut at Monza in a Williams, it was Nick De Vries, and Nick De Vries scored points. And so everyone's going to be going into this weekend being like, is this the next Nick De Vries? Is he going to score points? Williams are great at Monza. He's going to get hyped up. It's all people are going to be able to talk about outside of the championship fight. And I don't see it happening necessarily. Williams aren't as good in a straight line. And I feel like no one has mentioned that in anything I've seen online since this has been announced. It's just been Williams' debut at Monza. He's going to do great. I don't know. I just can't buy it. And so unfortunately, I have to put him as my backmarker this weekend. Who do you have on pole position this weekend?
On pole position, I'm going with George Russell. I'm expecting a bounce back weekend from Mercedes. They've performed well at a couple of similar tracks. I'm thinking of Spa and Canada, where George was also on pole in incredibly close qualifying session. So
as close as it gets.
As close as it gets. But yeah, I think George will be on pole. And I think it'll be a really, really close qualifying once again. But I think Mercedes will have a good weekend.
I'm not fully buying a Mercedes bounce back this weekend, and so I've gone for Carlos Sainz on pole position. Interesting that neither of us have predicted a McLaren or Red Bull pole position. Maybe this is just me willing the best for Ferrari at home, but we have seen Carlos Sainz qualify well at Monza in the past, especially when it wasn't necessarily predicted that Ferrari would be on pole when Carlos Sainz got his pole position in Monza. And so I think he's going to do it again this year. We're going to see Carlos Sainz on pole position. Who do you think is going to finish in third position this weekend?
Third position, I've gone with my pole sitter, George Russell. I think he'll have the pace to get pole. I don't know if he'll have the pace to win the race, especially with how good that McLaren was looking this past weekend. And, Red Bull is, I think they've fallen a step behind McLaren, certainly in pace, but I think they're a step above the Mercedes and the Ferrari, or at least Max is. So I don't know that George will win the race, but I think he has the pace to get on the podium.
Yeah, I think that's a great choice. I've gone for Max Verstappen in third place, which might just be the lowest I've ever predicted him to finish. But I'm just thinking back in history that Monza used to be a terrible track for Red Bull before they became the dominant team that we've known them to be. Now that they're slipping away from that dominance, I fear that Monza could continue to be a poor track for them. I really don't have anything to back that up based on this year's car. It's kind of just looking back at history, and I've seen Red Bull do pretty terribly at Monza in the past. And so if a terrible weekend for Max Verstappen this year is a P3, that's still pretty impressive. But I can't put him any higher than P3 this weekend. Who do you think is going to finish in second this weekend?
I've got Max Verstappen in second place. Kind of going off of what you said, but I think that they don't have the pace to win the race necessarily. So we'll see what happens, but I've got Max.
Second place, I've gone for Carlos Sainz. Kind of like you said about the Mercedes, I don't think that Ferrari has the pace to compete for the win. I think there is a clear step between the top two cars and the third and fourth place cars. But I think if Carlos Sainz could bring home a second place for Ferrari after finishing on pole, I still think that would be a great weekend for them. So I've got him in second place. And in first place, who have you got?
I've got Lando Norris. I think Lando, he just had a great weekend in Zandvoort, and I expect him to continue that, especially if he wants to stay in the title fight.
I agree. I've put Lando Norris in first place as well. He did have a very good weekend at the Dutch Grand Prix, and I expect him to continue his momentum and win this race as well. It really is his only way back into the title fight. He's going to have to be almost perfect for the rest of the year to even have a chance to win the title. And I think Monza is a track that I could see that continuing into. I don't have a reason to expect that the McLaren won't be strong here. And so I think Lando Norris is going to continue to capitalize, and I've got him in first place as well. Brandon, what are your two bold predictions for the Italian Grand Prix?
Right. My first bold prediction, I feel like, is pretty bold. It's very specific. Maybe it's not bold, but it is specific. So the top five in the race, this is in no particular order, but will consist of both Mercedes drivers, both McLaren drivers, and one Red Bull. So I'm going all in on the bounce back weekend for Mercedes. So I think Lewis and George will finish in the top five. Lando and Oscar will be in the top five, as well as Max Verstappen, most likely. But I left the prediction open enough that if Max does DNF somehow, Sergio sneaks in the top five, we can still get the prediction right.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's my first bold prediction. Second bold prediction is one team in the bottom five of the Constructors' Championship will score points during the race. So yeah, I think it'll be kind of a tight race in the midfield.
I was only okay with that second prediction because your first one was so specific that I don't think you're going to get that point. But that second one isn't really bold at all. We've seen Alpine score points. We've seen Haas score points. Even RB could score points. So that's not the most bold thing I've ever seen in my life, but I'll allow it. My two bold predictions. First is that Ferrari scores the second most points as a team this weekend. So that is in complete contradiction to your first prediction, because you didn't even think they're going to finish in the top five. And then my second bold prediction, Old Faithful, the classic, that Lance Stroll outqualifies Fernando Alonso. Have I ever been correct when I've made this bold prediction? No, I have not. Will I continue to make this bold prediction? Absolutely, I will. So those are my two bold predictions this weekend.
Unfortunately, there's not a scenario where we can go 4 for 4. But that's okay. We'll see who comes out on top.
Yeah, hopefully it will be me for my sake, because I have not been great on points recently. Brandon, what are your parting podium thoughts before we leave these lovely people?
Parting podium thoughts is it's one weekend closer to the United States Grand Prix. I'm excited to see Formula One cars out on the track, and it's going to be a great time with us in Austin. And yeah, I'm just really thankful for everybody who listens to our podcast, and I appreciate all of you guys listening and supporting us. We really love talking about Formula One, and getting to do this together is a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching and listening. We really do appreciate it. As Brandon said, we will be in Austin. If you see us around, come say hey. We would love to meet some of the people who watch or listen to our content. That would be absolutely incredible. That is all we've got for our Italian Grand Prix predictions. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Podium Pusher podcast. Like Brandon said, like, subscribe, follow, do all of the things that you know to do on whatever platform you're watching or listening on, because you know better than us, honestly. We will see you at the beginning of next weekend as we recap the Italian Grand Prix. See you there.
See ya.